We already made that joke once, so I can't even use that. Welcome to Still Untitled, the Adam Savage Project. I'm Will.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Norm.
Your job's a joke, you broke your love life's DOA. Is that what we...
Is that the actual lyric?
Yeah, I think it is.
No.
Did you see, there was a post last night on one of the social networking sites about Michael Jackson's working methods.
Really?
Yeah. And
fascinating. I'm already in.
well, one of the things was he did not read music, nor did he actually play any instruments. And there are people who complain, he's not a real musician. Get what this guy would do. He would show up in the morning before a studio session with a tape recorded group of, he would basically sit there with a little mixer and record all of the parts.
Like with his
of
voice.
a song, with his voice, all of the guitar chords, all of the string arrangements. He would do it all with his voice, and he'd show up and he'd be able to orchestrate a full string ensemble.
I would pay anything to hear one of those.
Well, there's a bunch of them online. There's one for Beat It. And my wife and I were like, what are the lyrics from Beat It? Beat it, beat it. No
when it
one
gets
got the
cold,
food to
reheat
beat
it.
You know, it's like,
doesn't. Yeah.
so this beautiful sound of him just overlaid over his own voice, playing all the parts, even beatboxing and everything. Apparently there's like 15 up on the line. I haven't only listened to the Beat It one.
That's amazing.
It's incredible.
And so are they all mixed?
Well, yeah, by him though, with just a little tape recorder.
like a
micro cassette
tape.
recorder.
Wow.
apparently.
So it's like looping when people, when musicians go on stage and play all the parts.
And he'd just sit there and like, I figured it out. Here's what I want to do. And the recording engineer said it was just astonishing.
So that explains a lot about the sound of his music. Like that explains that, like the richness and depth, but also like a lot of his instruments almost sound like voices.
Right.
Which like if you think about the way he uses a bass in songs, it is, I totally get it.
Now, I don't know why. I started that story because of the impossibility of knowing what the lyrics to Beat It are, and I'm sure they'll be in the comments section right away.
So there's
You're saying it's not on the internet. It's not on like lyrics.
I haven't gone to look. I didn't go look.
Beat It lyrics are definitely.
Or I wonder what Google Translation or Google Google Auto Caption.
Auto caption.
What we should do is feed the Beat It lyrics into Google Translate, and then to translate to like Russian, and then from Russian to Polish, and Polish to Japanese, and Japanese to French, and then back to English, and see what the lyrics are.
Best game
There you go.
telephone.
Yeah.
That sounds really fun.
Speaking of listening to things, a few weeks ago we talked about your hearing.
Yep.
People asked how things went after the doctor's appointments and all that stuff.
The operation's been amazing. The hearing in my left ear, which was formerly my bad ear, is now almost twice as good from my perspective as my right ear. Now, I don't know what that will translate. It's still a couple weeks before I go back in for a hearing test to see where we stand. I can't put my hearing aid in that ear because it's too loud.
Oh, that's great.
I need to have everything recalibrated.
I noticed there's only one on the table.
There is only one on the table because I've only been wearing one for a couple of weeks
I
now.
asked because you asked for about 30% less volume than you normally ask.
Yeah. Now, what's in my left ear is still healing, right? Because the prosthesis is sitting behind the eardrum, and the eardrum it's a whole thing that has to heal in there. And consequently, what I'm missing is a lot of the high end. It's all, the hearing is better than my right ear, but it's mostly all on the low end. So I still need the hearing aid to get that. And in fact, what's great is that that's what hearing aids are really good at replicating. So when I go back in for a hearing test and a recalibration of the hearing aids, it should make me like almost have bionic hearing.
That's awesome.
It's going to be awesome.
Fantastic.
Very cool.
I have one more operation, or hopefully one more operation, and I was emailing with my surgeon about it, and it looks like I'm going to try and do that later on this year. And he feels that the response from this year was so good that we don't need a set of two full complicated operations, that we could actually go right through the ear and my right ear and make it a single stop shop and kind of get it working.
That's much better than multiple operations.
Oh, God, I hate going under general.
It's established. We got way too much detail on that. We're good.
Okay,
gross.
moving on.
We had a couple questions when we did the Q&A podcast a few weeks ago. One of the first 5 videos that we made with you was about your Sortimo storage system, which if you haven't watched the video, you should go watch the video. It's on YouTube. But basically what the Sortimo stuff is a series of shelves that hold a series of cases, and the cases have a series of compartments. And in the compartments, you can put things, and you can open them up and close them, and the things don't spill out of the compartments.
Yeah, it's really wonderful. In fact, it's so wonderful that Sortimo has has a U.S. distributor, but they don't do a lot of. There's no retail outlet for Sortimo here, and if you do a Google search for Sortimo, you find people like Craftsman and other companies' versions of it.
Yeah, the ripoffs.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily. They're giving it the old college try, but frankly, I've never seen anything as good as this.
Okay.
Not everyone needs one of those systems, though.
No.
Like, you can just use jewelry cases.
You can.
Or hobby boxes, whatever.
After a lifetime of having bought sorting boxes and putting stuff into them, the modularity of the Sortimo system is paramount. The ability to move and change the components within a box because, it turns out I'm doing a lot more. Now that I have my rivets in one place, I need 5 different sizes of rivets, and so I need different sizes of containers within that thing.
Well, and because the containers are all, you can lift them out and move them into another one, it means that you're playing Tetris instead of playing pour the stuff into the different containers.
Right. Now, that's a huge one. And no one's quite gotten that. Oh, also, after a lifetime of buying sorting boxes, having them all be the same kind in a similar place on a shelf, it's so different than having them stacked on a shelf where I've got to pull out the bottom one.
Well, and then the thing that it blows me away with this is every time you do it, and I know how it works, but you reach up and you grab the handle and you pull the thing out and you hold it like a briefcase vertically, and I'm like, good God, man, all of those, there are thousands of tiny little screws in there. They're all almost the same size. It's going to, when it spills, it's going to be a horrible mess, and it never spills.
Well, this is actually funny that you say this because no, I didn't have any big spills, but my shop nuts and bolts go all the way down to 256. That's a size 2 screw with 56 threads per inch. There are sizes under that, and I do have occasion to need them. They're 080 and 172.
Is that for like watches and stuff like that, or are those even smaller?
No. That's still much bigger than watch screws.
Okay.
It's very tiny, but it's still something that I actually just ordered a whole bunch of 080 and 172 screws, cap heads, nuts, washers, etc. And that is a size that does sneak past the dividers within the Sortimo. So what I'm actually going to have to do to accommodate that is run some little gasket strips in the grid that holds the boxes in orientation so that things do. Because I opened up my set screw box the other day and I have a bunch of 172 set screws. And a lot of them had gotten out.
It's kind of surprising that Sortimo doesn't just make the tubs that have the gasket on the top, because then it would just work in any of them, right?
Yeah, except that I understand why they don't. What they have works for 99.99% of stuff you would put in these. When you're trying to put in like these size nuts and bolts, it is like ludicrously small, and they'd go through a lot. Oh, also, the loose tolerance that they have that allows those to slip through also allows you to close the case without having to constantly make sure everything is absolutely perfect.
Fair enough.
There's a reason the Glock never jams. It's because it's built with nice fat tolerances where things like it rattles and things move around. That means, though, that no amount of heating and firing and stuff or even dirt is actually going to ruin its persuasion, sort of like a Kalashnikov.
Yeah.
Right? Loose tolerance is good in the engineering world.
Okay. That's very interesting. So,
but storage.
Yes, like one of the things that people have commented on in videos and that we've noticed is that maybe not every single time, but most of the time when you say, "Oh, I need something," you go directly to one of the 55 or 100 drawers that are back there. Say, "Oh, okay, this is," and everything's labeled. Or for the most part, it's labeled. And you pull it out on usually the first try, and if not the first try, you're in the general vicinity, and then you're like, "Oh, wait, I was using this the other day. I didn't put it back. It's over here."
Right.
Like so what? Like this is a massive shop.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a massive for a personal shop, especially. There's a lot of stuff in here. It's very full.
Yeah.
What's your storage? Like, what's your strategy?
Well, it's an interesting one because, like, I don't think anyone should imagine that I don't lose things or lose track of things, because I totally do, like everybody does.
Well, and you're very generous with tools, and that is both a wonderful thing and sometimes can bite you in the ass.
Yeah, absolutely. And things can break and you can forget to replace them. But for the most part, it really does work most of the time, like you see it in the videos, that I have the place now set up in a way that things are at my disposal when I need them. Now, that's a particular bailiwick of mine. I really, really like having immediate access to everything. And we've talked about this with my toolboxes, the concept of first order retrievability, the idea you don't have to move anything out of the way to get to anything else. And as such, one of the regular shop infrastructure things I do isn't just building shelves, but I actually go through my drawers and I'm steadily doing this for the past 3 months. I choose a drawer and I'm like, okay, got to make this drawer work. So, a month and a half ago, I finally took this drawer packed with nippers and needle nose pliers and regular pliers and slip jaw pliers and channel locks and all that stuff. And I sorted them into 5 different drawers and laid them out really carefully. And I'd been meaning to do this for a year and a half. So prior to that, I was always like sifting through this drawer to find the thing I needed.
It was the junk drawer.
And you can easily get into a zone where that's just how you go find the thing. Oh, I sift through the drawer. The more I set this shop up, the more I find that state of affairs unacceptable. So I just remind myself, okay, you hate going into the sockets drawer because the sockets you need are never there. So yesterday, I went to Center Hardware and I bought a socket set. And lovely, they sell a socket set outside of a case.
Oh, it's just loose. Is it on one of those?
Loose.
Is it on one of those things?
Right.
Yeah.
But that allowed me to take a beautiful socket sorter that I had bought on Amazon, which was basically just little nubs for all your sockets to put into a Craftsman toolbox like I have, 16 by 20. And I sorted all the sockets in there, metric on the right, SAE on the left, and that drawer is done.
Well, there's a reason that prison kitchens and prison shops have the painted pictures of the knives on the wall.
Oh, right.
It's so that you can see what's missing. And when you have them all laid out like that, it's super easy to see what's missing. If all of your sockets are just rattling around a tray, you're never going to know what you don't do and don't have.
Be organized.
Exactly. Well, and my Forstner bits, I use Forstner bits. If you don't know what a Forstner bit is, it's one of my favorite drill bits in the world. They drill perfectly round holes. You can use them to almost do machining practically.
You've converted Norman and me both.
Yeah.
You'll see it in the beaver box build video and also the sword video.
They're amazing. And I have a set and it sits, because I use it so frequently and couldn't figure out where to put the box that houses them, it sat on the edge of my glue container for 2 years.
And they're weird shaped bits, so it's not like you put them in a drawer or something like that.
No, you wouldn't, because they're sharp and they have to remain sharp. So instead, I built an upright sorter for them, like a drill, and which meant that there's like 4 different sizes of shanks on them. So I had to get 4 different sizes of drill bits and set the depths. It's a tedious job, but I did a whole bunch of that for my unibits, my countersunk bits, and my Forstner bits on top of my drill bit case. And now I've been using the crap out of them.
Do you look at that time as an investment? Like, is that something that you get back in seconds at a time down the road, or is it just something that makes you feel better?
Both.
Okay.
Both. It feeds the OCD in me to have it all organized like that. It definitely speeds me up next time I have to do the work, and it makes things cleaner, which makes me more relaxed. But Tom Sachs and I talked about this, that sometimes when you go into your shop, you don't feel like there's something you want to work on. Like the project you've got, I just don't know where to go with it, so I'm not going to.
You don't know where to start. You don't know where to start, just like anybody else.
So on that front, you just do shop infrastructure that day. And I find that incredibly satisfying. And I was talking to you before the podcast. There's a great book called Liar's Club by an amazing writer named Mary Karr. And Mary Karr got very famous for Liar's Club and was asked about her writing routine. And she said, I write every day from... I don't know what her routine is, but she writes every single day during these hours.
That is a super common thing that successful writers tell you. I write, no matter how much or how little I write, either I write 1,000 words a day every day, or I write from 7 o'clock until 9 o'clock in the morning, and then the rest of the day is mine.
Exactly. Yeah. But someone said, what if you don't feel like writing when you sit down? And she said, I copy authors that I like's writing in longhand. And they said, why would you do that? And she said, my fidelity at the desk is to write. If I don't feel it, I will copy writing that I love in order to get a deeper connection to it. And I totally get that.
Crossing words, and it's
and really sort of getting deeply inculcated with the flow and the meter of that writer's tone and understanding it on almost a physical level.
It's like when you walk on a familiar road, someplace you drive, like I can walk down the road that I drive every day on the way to work, and if I'm walking down it, I see things that I've never seen before and will never notice otherwise.
I have also noticed this over the years. Like, look at any master shot from a film. right? The master shot's always from about at least 15 feet off the ground, if not a crane shot that comes from like 30 feet down to 12 feet, right?
Should you explain what a master shot is? I'm sorry.
A master shot is like the establishing shot that shows you where you are in the scene of the film. So if you look at a standard scene in a film, it's composed of usually a master shot and then an interim shot. And then if there's people talking, there'll be a 2-shot and then insert reverse angles.
It's all stuff that establishes how you're like, it sets the tone for you without having to explicitly say, hey, we're in a city and it's 1950 and there's 3 people here and 2 of them are going to talk to each other.
Exactly. How would you know it's 1950 if you don't see cars on the street? But if you've ever seen a master shot filmed in a place that you actually know, what you'll notice is it doesn't look like a place you recognize because you've never seen the place you know from that height and from that vantage point, nor have you ever looked at it quite in that way.
Well, and sometimes they'll even crank it up some to make it even look more that place.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like if they want to make something look like San Francisco, they put a hill there, even if there's no hill there in the real world. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I spend as I've joked before that I'm a high functioning hoarder. Back to storage.
Oh, that was a joke?
But I spend a lot of time working on the infrastructure of where stuff is and making sure I know where it is. And it is a constant battle because I acquire stuff, I trade stuff, I throw stuff out, I give stuff away, all that kind of stuff happens. And I still, end up with things missing that I don't know where they are, even though I know I saw them last week. And I really, really, really strive not to have that happen.
It's the kind of thing that'll make you crazy if you're not careful.
It will. So, I finally, my son, he messed up, and so I made him work for me for 3 weekends in a row. And he spent his whole time up in the loft here at the shop sorting stuff. And it's like every single kit, every single model kit that I have, all those PKD kits from Rick Ross, my 2001 kits and stuff like that, they're all now in a single shelf.
I just want to point out that the thing that you made your son do as punishment is something that probably thousands upon thousands of people would gladly do on a volunteer basis.
Oh, for me.
Right.
But he's your son, so that's punishment.
He actually, to his credit, he stepped up and really had a good time with it. He had a blast doing it and took a personal interest in it that was lovely to watch.
Is there a long tail of tool usage here where you find that everything gets used at some point?
There's still, it's funny. If you looked at it statistically, you'd probably find that I use 5% of my tools 95% of the time.
Yeah, like I think when you said, hey, you should use a biscuit cutter for this thing I was working on, I'm pretty sure it had never been used when I took it.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah.
Because I had a biscuit joiner that I used extensively before I started working on, I think it was the Matrix films. Okay. And then I rented my toolkit to the production, and my biscuit joiner didn't make it back to me. Oh. So because almost immediately after the Matrix films, I started on Mythbusters and thus wasn't doing any kind of work that ever required that. I simply bought a DeWalt biscuit joiner to replace the one. Yeah. And I put it on the shelf. And there are a lot of tools like that I may use once every 5 years. But man, I was at Center Hardware yesterday and I was looking at the screw bits. And they had hardened steel Phillips head bits that were like 10 inches long.
Wow, that's crazy.
Of a number 1, number 2, and a flathead. I bought all 3. I'm like, I am never going to need these, but the day I need them, I'm going to be like, you win!
You genius! You madman! If you're able to find them, of course.
No, they're in the driver's box. And
how are things labeled for when people who want to use your shop?
I don't label it for anyone else ever. And I know I should, but only recently have I started to actually hire people to help me out in the shop.
And the labels
people are actually using
the labels on the drawers are a new thing. When we first started coming in, I mean, some of the stuff was obviously labeled, but a lot of times you'd say, go into the red toolbox and get something from the 3rd drawer down. And then you'd be like, no, the other red toolbox.
Right.
And,
and the label is an ongoing process. So there's still a bunch of drawers full of shit and full of crap that needs sorting. The electronics are a mess because I've just ported them over to another drawer where, the main tools I use like wire strippers, soldering irons, and clip leads and stuff like that are stored. So it's always an ongoing process. And sometimes, if I only get in here, sometimes I don't get in here very often. But I try and come in at least once a day, even for like 20 minutes. And if I only have 20 minutes, I'll just go up and make a
That's
drawer
a drawer.
look good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and how do you handle the stuff that's hard? Like there's some stuff that I have, like clip leads are a good example.
Yeah.
Like that kind of stuff, most electronic stuff, little tiny resistors and all that stuff. It is, part of me thinks you should organize that stuff by how you're going to use it. Part of me thinks you should just put all the stuff that's the same together, and that way at least you're able to find it when you get there.
It's an ongoing process. It really is. Yeah, I just put some. I need straight edges all the time, and I have a drawer full of straight edges, and it's terrible because I'm always having to sift through it. So I took the 4 I use all the time. 3 straight edges and a square, and I put them upright. I built a little upright sorter for them so that they're actually out.
You can grab them,
so I can just reach out. I don't have to go to a drawer to get them. And what is a tool that I have a problem with that?
You don't have screwdrivers out, I noticed.
No, I don't have screwdrivers out. Frankly, I use screwdrivers very little.
Okay.
I mean, I
guess you use a driver.
Yeah, I use a driver and an impact wrench. What is really basically if I have some, like I've been knowing I wanted to put straight edges out for a couple of weeks now. I've been picturing how they would look and thinking through various iterations of how to achieve what I wanted really over a couple of weeks. So I come in and I just look around the shop and I think, where would straight edges live? For instance, I also need a 24, 36, and 48 inch straight edge. In fact, I also should have my 72 inch out instead of sitting back leaning up against something.
Right.
I should have them sitting somewhere. But what wall space do I devote to them? Where do they live in a way that they're accessible, but they don't take up too much space? And that's always a balance. Some things belong in drawers. Like screwdrivers are great for drawers, and I don't need to sort them very much because I have, like 100 screwdrivers.
I mean, and in reality, you probably use 3 Phillips head screwdrivers and 1 flat screwdriver. And that's probably what you use 90% of the time when you need a screwdriver.
It is true. And certainly there's enough space that I've been playing with that I could take my nice little Weha Jewelers screwdrivers and make a sorter for the top 10 of those Phillips and flatheads. But I also have come up with solutions that I've ended up abandoning a few weeks later because I realized this is ridiculous. I'm not using it like this, and I shouldn't have thought that I was.
Or it's more of a hassle to keep it the way you made it than it is actually worth the work to do it.
And there's also monitoring my own work habits. Like I said, I'd be going to this Forster bit sorter sitting on the edge of this thing. It wasn't actually a place. It was just sort of put there, but it was the best place to put it because I used them every day. And literally took me weeks before I noticed that was officially what I was doing, to acknowledge that's what I was doing. And then it became time to think of a real solution.
For people who don't have massive shops or starting their own shops, should they organize and sort to scale up? How does the scaling work as they get more tools? Is it just constant reorganizing, taking stuff out, and then
for me it has always been constant reorganizing.
Yeah. And that's tough to want to do.
It is. But I
actually really like
the organizing deeply satisfying.
So it's emptying things.
I have always, even when I was actively model making an ILM, I've talked extensively about how I had like $10,000 worth of tools in these 2 toolboxes. Any given month, I would take the toolboxes home, dump them completely, and put them all back together from scratch, adding new pieces and new ideas.
It's kind of like building a computer for yourself, right? I mean, I know that's probably not something you've engaged in.
No, but I understand it.
But you feel the same way. I could go out and buy a Dell, and it would be probably cheaper and maybe more reliable. Maybe not at this point, but it also comes with a bunch of crap on it, and I didn't know what they did to it. And when you build it yourself, when you put it all together yourself, then you know exactly what goes into it and what to expect.
I will say this about Toolbox. I've also always used toolboxes. I've always used traveling toolboxes, and only since I've been doing Mythbusters, when most of the stuff I do is not fine model making. It's really big welding and stuff. And now I have this shop that I don't have my tools in a toolbox. I will tell you, there's a couple of things that make great toolboxes. And they show up on eBay and Craigslist all the time. One is a radio tube salesman box. Okay. They're beautiful. They're made of wood. They're often covered in like a hound's tooth. They look old. They're gorgeous. And they're like, $20, $30 for something like that. And I've used those for tools. The old Craftsman...
The price is about to go way up, just FYI.
The Craftsman rolling toolboxes. Those show up on Craigslist constantly.
Those are when people clean out their garage or somebody dies or whatever.
That's often one of the first things to go, and they look like crap. They've been beat up. They're covered in oil. Doesn't matter, man. I've got 2 of them, and I've got Kennedy boxes as well. By the way, Kennedy boxes, the expensive machinist toolboxes with that brown crinkle finish, those also show up on Craigslist frequently for very little money compared to what they cost new. Mm-hmm. And that stuff is fantastic.
What's just to give kind of like, what's a good price for something like that? A couple $100?
God, it's been a long time. The first big Kennedy stack I bought was after I'd been at ILM for about a year and a half. And this is when I say Kennedy stack, that means a base unit, which is wide and has wheels on it. And then you have 2 units that stack on top of that. Those can retail for well into the like $1,000 or $1,500 or $2,000 range. Forget about the Snap-on rolling cases, but the Kennedy stack is pretty expensive. I picked up mine on Craigslist for $700 for a full stack. That's a third of retail. It was a totally worthwhile investment. I still own it.
Well, and they're the kind of tools it's just like buying good tools. This stuff lasts forever if you take reasonably good care of it.
It does. I also I recognize, when I say $700, it was a good deal. I recognize that's still a shit ton of money, and it's real money. And I don't mean to say that, you might hear that and think, I'm not going to go look. I can't afford $700. You could find a top stacker, which is basically stores the fine machinist tools, a Kennedy box. That's the one. It'll have a handle on it, and it'll be about the size of what you expect a normal toolbox to be. Mm-hmm. You could find those on Craigslist for probably $100, $150, and that is a great price for that.
Yeah, and it'll hold it's much better than using a fishing tackle box.
Yeah, I'm addicted to boxes, and I love them. And I have a whole section up in the loft of just boxes.
We'll visit there sometime on video. And Joey will love that. It's nice low ceilings.
Oh, poor guy. And I still occasionally log on to Craigslist and search Toolbox, and I'll find, Grandpa's shitty beat up cobbler's box. And I don't care about the tools. I'm looking at the box. If you find, I know I'm kind of rambling in this podcast a lot, but if you find a toolbox you think is really beautiful, you are going to want to sort stuff into it and make it useful. That has been my key. So I am always wanting to upgrade. And in that case, when I was learning the saxophone years ago, and the saxophone teacher told me, saxophones are expensive. You should find one that you can afford. And when you can upgrade, you should upgrade to a better one. But with mouthpieces, every single time you play a mouthpiece that feels better than the one you own, you need to buy it right away. And it's actually very interesting because it turns out that mouthpieces is still quite an art form, and they're not all mass manufactured. And, a good sax player ends up finding a mouthpiece really that feels like it's built for their mouth. So when you find one, that's the one you should get.
You'd marry it.
Yeah. And I feel the same way about toolboxes. Put all your tools in a really nice box, and if you find one that's better, throw that other one out and put them in the new box.
And the nice thing about tools and toolboxes is they retain value pretty well if you take reasonably good care of them. So the thing that you bought on Craigslist for $600, you'll be able to put back on Craigslist and probably sell it for about $600.
Very, very likely.
Yeah, maybe more because inflation. Thanks, thanks, Obama. I think we've covered a lot of territory here.
One of the things I love about this type of podcast is reading the comments afterwards and hearing other people's
it's
solutions.
Great.
That's why, because I know Chris Hardwick says reading the comments is like cutting, but I do read a lot of the tested comments because it's a really, really wonderful community. And the suggestions that I end up seeing are actually really invigorating and awesome.
And the other thing that you we talked about the vertical holding stuff for the bits and the straight edges and all, but you haven't hesitated to build custom stuff for anything in the shop. Like you have a big horizontal rack for all the ribbon and tape and foil and all that stuff. Like there's a lot of places, like the rack that you hold your plywood and your flats in over the side is pretty neat. So maybe at some point I
built my sandpaper sorter, and actually, that would be a beautiful one-day build. I could build another one and show. I've always built my own sandpaper sorter because I have very specific desire and needs for that.
Oh, see, I put sandpaper in one of those flat hobby boxes from Michaels, and I have one for each grit.
Oh,
which is I don't have that much sandpaper, so it works.
I buy sandpaper 50 sheets at a time, and I need a big sorter.
Yeah, that's a lot of sandpaper.
But also I get a tremendous amount of satisfaction out of using the custom built stuff. And that was really funny when I finally met Tom Sachs, because it's like, that's his whole thing, is the custom built toolbox that holds the things that you want. And it's like, we couldn't believe how much crossover there was in terms of, the places you go to customize your tool area.
And the neat thing about walking around somebody's shop is that it's kind of like glimpsing into their memory palace, right? Like you have this is. I could not see you for 10 years come into a new shop that you've set up, and I'm going to know it's probably your shop because it's the way it's laid out.
Right.
Same thing for Jamie's shop. And anytime you spend a lot of time in somebody's space, you get a feel for how things are arranged and how they like to keep things and all that. It's kind of,
I'm a big believer in comfort, and this is one of the places where Jamie and I butt heads frequently, because he'll be like, yeah, I built this, and in order to use it, all I have to do is go get 220 power on a 700-foot extension cord and plug it in, and then it works just great. So it's like 20 minutes between idea and execution, and I'm always like, that would stop me from doing that ever. And I notice that when tools are accessible, I use them. When they're not, there are times I'll make a bad decision because it's like, I got to go upstairs and go get that thing that's stored up there. And so I'm not going to do it, and I'll do something worse. For me, comfort, and I mean comfort of the convenience. Let's say convenience
is the right word.
Matters hugely in my ability to get the job done.
All right. I think we'll share a photo of the setup.
Oh, yeah. We should just take a photo. I'll push out the drill bit box with the clip leads there, which is my clip lead solution. And frankly, I searched for a solution for clip leads for a decade before homing in on that just a couple of months ago.
I mean, just to paint the word picture, if you don't come, you have one end of the clip leads hooked on what looks like a thin piece of metal, and then the other end just dangles.
Yeah.
So you can tell how long everything is.
But they're all there. They're all in one place. They're not tangled. They're all sorted by color. And
the not tangled is the important part.
And they're not in my way.
Yeah.
They're not in the way of a drawer, because no one's ever going to lay their clip leads out all horizontal.
And even if you do, 15 minutes later, you come back and it's a rat's nest of clips lead, and you need to get something out, and you end up playing the which end goes to which. So you just get the continuity tester out, plug that in. You're like, okay, this is it. And then you have a rat's nest hooked up between. It's not good.
First comment. What's a clip lead?
Yeah.
I'm sure.
So that'll do it. I'm gonna. That's it. We're done.
We're done.
Premium. If you want to sign up for premium membership Untested, you can go to tested.com/premium. We have a lot of great video. You can watch Norm make unbelievably. Clapping?
I'm just clapping.
Okay, it's good. Yeah. You can watch Norm make these unbelievable paper models that are super small and really detailed, and they're kind of exciting. Like, they're really neat. We have you and I talked after South by last a couple weeks ago, 3-4 weeks ago now, about speaking in public. There's all sorts of good kind of behind the scenes extra stuff there, and you get a discount in the store and a newsletter and some other stuff. So there's that. If you don't want to support us, by sending money, then we love reviews on iTunes.
We totally do.
Comments on YouTube. I can't believe I'm soliciting comments on YouTube, but the comments on YouTube have been really good lately. So keep those coming. Comments on the podcast page. All that stuff is great.
Excellent.
And reviews on iTunes help more than anything else you can do, I think.
Yes.
Those push podcasts to the top of the list. That's what they tell us anyway. We'll see you guys next week.
See you next week.
Bye.